Welcome to The Change, a podcast about the changes in life that can shake, break, and make us. I'm Laura, a 44-year-old writer, podcaster, and mum who has until recently always loved change.
And I'm Kathy, 52-year-old writer, podcaster, and mum. And change is actually my kryptonite. We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia on which this podcast is recorded and recognise the continuing connections to lands, waters and communities.
We pay our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and elders past and present.
Hey Laura, how you going?
I'm good, thanks, Kathy. How are you going?
I'm really well, and I'm super excited to be interviewing Lizza today.
Yes.
You worked with her, I believe.
I did.
So.
And I think she is a very inspirational guest, especially for anyone that's interested in media and how, the magazine industry. She's got a lot of experience. Lizza Gebilagin, she's an editor, writer, and podcaster whose work is inspired by ordinary people who do extraordinary things. She's the former editor-in-chief of Women's Health and was previously deputy editor on iconic Aussie titles Cleo and Dolly, before more recently launching a Substack newsletter called the 3 a.m. Huddle, musings on the things that keep us up at night, which is very relatable when you've got little kids that keep you up.
Or a menopausal brain. Like me.
Yeah, that too, right? After making her fighting debut, now this is boxing, I know, at what many consider an age much too old to start, which is 32 and not 22, Lizza went on to become a New South Wales state boxing champion and king, or is it queen, of the ring. She represented the New South Wales team at the national boxing titles, women's world boxing qualifiers and Arufura games. She's basically just a all-round champion, and she's going to be chatting to us right now. Welcome to the Change podcast. How are you? It is lovely to see you.
It's so lovely to see you. I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, really good.
It's a bit hot, but otherwise, very well.
Yes, I'm melting. My hands are sweaty. I don't know if you can see my
Yeah, I
palms.
feel a little like that too.
Yeah.
It's sweaty everywhere, actually. It's not very pleasant. But Lizza, we're here to talk to you today about your amazing career in media and how you've kind of bridged the gap between print magazines and digital media, which is where Kathy and I met, obviously at Mamma Mia.
Mhm.
Tell us about what was happening in your life in the lead up to when you took what you call the biggest job to date of your career, which was editor-in-chief at Women's Health magazine.
Well, a lot of things are happening. Could say that the whole world was falling apart because it was during COVID, when COVID first was taking over the world. And at the time, the media industry was basically in disarray. So many people were losing their jobs. Lots of brands were closing down. And I'd been working on women's health for many years as deputy editor. And my job was one of the jobs that were made redundant, which was so sad.
Oh, so
Um,
sad.
Yeah, at the time, I was producing our podcast, Uninterrupted, which was my favorite part of the job. And then in the week that I was made redundant, I also found out that I was pregnant, unplanned.
Yay.
Oh, wow.
Oh my goodness.
So it's like when you think of change, it's like, holy shit, all these
Yes.
things are happening all at once. And with everyone losing their jobs and the media industry changing so much, I really had to think like, if I'm going to freelance and not going to find a permanent job in the next few months, how am I going to do this? Working in the fitness space and the health media, I've always loved encouraging people to get fitter and healthier. So I did my certificate 3 in fitness. I did my boxing coaching certificate, and I ended up doing PTing. Well,
I love that. Yeah.
So on any day you'd find me either doing a personal training session with someone in the park, then writing an article for a media outlet, then working in the office as a contributing editor to prevention.
Wow.
During that time, with this massive change, is like, got to think about it was almost like having a portfolio career, like looking at different ways where you can earn money to make sure that you're bringing enough money in. So I had Amelia. I was in that time, Women's Health ended up being picked up by another publisher, which was awesome. Happy days. And because as a freelancer, you don't have that maternity leave cover
Mm.
from a company, you end up having to go back to work much earlier than
Yeah.
you want. And so that happened for me. Amelia was only 5 months old when I went back to work part time
Wow.
at Women's Health. And then a few weeks later, the editor decided that she was going to leave.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I never thought she would leave.
Was she part of the reason why you wanted to get back into that publication? Was she,
Yeah.
a good mentor
Yeah.
or yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
she's been awesome and we're still
Yeah.
really good friends now and I
Oh,
still
that's
work with
great.
her now. And so I never thought she would leave. And at the same time, I was like, this is my chance. Like,
Mm.
this is the job that I've always loved and thought I'd do great at. And I always had these great visions of how women's health could do so well with mags and digi and social and pods and live events. And I could see how it could all come together and really build this really cool community. So I remember the next week when I went into the office talking to the publisher, they brought me in and I was like, they're like, how do you feel about the editor leaving? And I'm like, I was honest with them. I was shocked, but I
Mm.
was like, I am ready to step up.
Ah,
And their reaction actually shocked me because
okay.
they were like, we didn't even think you'd be interested in the job. I'm like, why?
Why? Yes.
Yeah.
Because I had a baby.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness. The 50s?
Yeah.
Mm.
They were in their 50s.
Yes.
But it just really shocked me that I was being overlooked for a role that I was clearly capable of
Mm.
and really suited for because I had a small child. But
mm.
on the bright side, they immediately apologized
Okay, good.
and then offered me the role. So
Oh,
there
all
you
Awesome.
go.
happy days. Yes,
All
thank
happy
goodness.
days. So
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
how I ended up with my biggest job of my career with a 5-month-old child in the depths of lockdown and during COVID.
My
Wow.
goodness. There's so many changes all at
So,
once.
Yeah.
so many all at once.
Yeah. How did you survive those first kind of few weeks and months while juggling little 5-month-old Amelia, big job? How did you do it?
To be honest,
Mm.
I was only able to do it because my mum and my mother-in-law are such a
Yeah.
big help, such a massive support.
Mm.
I ended up working 4 days a week to start with, but ended up just working the fifth day anyway. But on those 4 days, my mum would look after her 2 days, my husband's mum the other 2 days, and they provided so much more support, like with helping with the laundry or the dishes, etc. Like having that was immense.
Mm.
And I luckily knew before having this major job that if I was going to do anything like this, having that big community and support would be massive.
Mm.
And I learned that from the interviews I did the year before on the podcast I started called Holy Shit, I'm Pregnant, because that was my reaction when I found out I was pregnant. But just talking to other women who were
Mm.
still had big careers and small kids, asking them how they did it. And
Mm.
it all came down to having that community set up. And whether if you don't have your mum or mother-in-law, like whether that's daycare as well, and not feeling guilty about it too.
Yeah, the guilt is such a major,
Ugh.
major factor, isn't it?
Major.
And women are so bad at that. Like men, of course, they go back for
Yeah.
centuries, have had big jobs. They just go back, they have children. It doesn't affect them. But
No,
yes,
no,
the
not at
guilt.
all.
No.
No.
And
Yeah.
I think it's important as well. And I think thank you as well for being honest about that, because I think a lot of women
Mm.
just don't always tell the truth about how they juggle and say, oh, and I don't think that's across the board, but I think sometimes it's just really refreshing to hear, well, I had a lot of help because I
Yeah.
couldn't possibly have a 6-month-old baby who's so tiny and also run a house and have a majorly impressive job like editor in chief. That's a big
Yeah.
job.
Yeah,
Yeah. Big job.
you need that help around you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean to say like I would still put her to bed and then
Mm.
afterwards I'd have to back on to finish whatever I couldn't finish earlier. And you know what it's like not getting any sleep? It was hard,
Oh
really
God.
hard. My
Yeah.
husband and I, what we did, we ended up alternating the wake ups so that we could both try and get a bit of sleep. But I seriously feel like I aged 5 years in the first year.
What did you learn about yourself and your capacity for resilience going through all those changes across a few short years? I feel like you must kind of enjoy change, maybe even the fact that you embraced a whole new career, PT, just before you started that big job.
Well, I think it's because I have trained myself to be good in those kinds of environments. And that started probably 10 years ago now when my uncle passed away.
Mm.
He had been sick for a while, and I took for granted the fact that he was going to die one day. And when he did, it
Mm,
just, it really shocked me and made me realize that, firstly, life is so fragile. We need to make the most of it. And secondly, that I wasn't living the life that I wanted to live because I was so
Yep.
scared of failure, so scared of what other people would think of me. I was just too scared to do what I truly wanted. So that year after he died, I promised myself every day for an entire year, I was going to do one thing that scared me. And it was as little as like telling a friend when they bailed on me last minute that that wasn't cool,
Yep.
to
mm.
going to China to study kung fu with Shaolin monks for a month, then
Oh, wow.
Wow.
resigning from my job at Cleo. I was working at Cleo magazine at the time. There were all these things that I'd wanted to do, and I just did them. And
Mm,
that really taught me resilience. It
Yes.
taught me that I could do really hard things. Like being in China, if you imagine the school that we were staying in, it was kind of like a concrete block. There was no
wow.
heating. It was the middle of winter. It was minus 20 degrees.
Oh.
And it was there that that I learned, I'm like, okay, if I can do this, I can do anything. I competed as a boxer for many years at national level, representing New South Wales at competitions. And being in the ring when someone wants to take your head off, you
Hmm?
learn resilience there too. You learn how to stay
Yeah.
calm when placed in hard positions. So then when COVID came and when COVID and Amelia and the big job came, I kind of knew how I could react, or how I
Mm,
could make those changes and make those changes work for me, and know that even in the moment when shit seems really hard, that that moment doesn't last forever.
Mm.
mm.
That's
Yeah.
really important to remember. It's not
Yeah,
forever. Like it
Mm,
feels like it in that moment, but it's not.
mm,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's not about like pushing those feelings away
Mm.
either. During this time, I learnt how to sit with those really uncomfortable feelings, and knowing that you have to do that in order to let them go and be able to see whatever it is, whatever next step you need to take next.
yeah. I just can't imagine, especially when you say about boxing, being in a ring and having someone literally wanting to beat the shit out of you.
Yeah.
I just, as having worked with you, Lisa, you obviously look super fit and everything, but I just feel like, wow, that's so intense. And I imagine, yeah, it does a lot for your mental health and resilience to have that face to face, literal combat, knowing you're gonna have to do something or probably take a massive punch and be injured.
Mhm.
So,
Exactly. And but the thing is, the funny thing about boxing is people think that you need to be really aggressive to be good
mm,
in boxing. But the I get, of course you do a little bit. But the
yeah.
thing is, you need to have such a clear mind when you're in that ring, that you have to kind of let your emotions go to the side for a bit so that you can access your executive function and make those really smart decisions. It's like a human chess game. That's why I
Mm.
love it so much.
I've not thought about it like that, but I can imagine, yeah, the quickest, but also, yeah, if you're aware and you're ahead of your opponent, mentally as well as physically, then that is a huge advantage.
Exactly. But it teaches you a lot about resilience.
Mm,
Mm.
yeah, for sure. We were talking before, obviously, about your big job at Women's Health magazine, and that you have worked also at Clio, and that you have sort of bridged the gap between the digital world that we now really live in and magazines that are a bit of a dinosaur, sadly. And I do miss magazines. Do you miss the glory days of magazines? And do you think the younger generations have missed out a little bit? Those magazines, we used to get them in the mail and they were just so lovely and fresh.
Yeah. Like I was so lucky that I ended up working in the tail end of the glory days of the magazine era. And I still remember the first day that I went to Park Street for an interview. So, for those of you who don't know, 54 Park Street in Sydney, if you wanted to work in magazines, that was the place to be because it had all the big mags. It had Clio, Cosmo, Dolly, it had still
Wow.
has Australian Women's
Mm.
Weekly. It had the entire building, and you're walking through. It's like, all those like Devil Wears Prada. It's like it looks exactly like what you've seen in
Mhm.
the movies and TV shows. So for me being there, I was like, I need to step up
Mhm.
my wardrobe.
Mhm.
But
Yes, the wardrobe.
the wardrobe. But it was
The
really
clackers, as they call them, isn't it?
oh my God, yes, I forgot that term, the clackers. Everyone clacked her down the street. It
Mhm,
was
mhm,
like a
mhm.
fashion parade
And
every
they're
day.
the heels, are they? For those that
Yeah.
don't know what
Yeah,
yeah,
Yes.
right.
yeah.
Yes.
In Devil Wears Prada, they call them the clackers
Love it.
because they go
Make
to
that
work in
noise.
their joggers and then they put their heels on when they get there, and
Yeah.
they're all pretty.
Yes, and these are like I don't know how I used to wear these, but these are like really thin stiletto heels, super
Oh,
high.
yeah.
I like, as you know, I'm a sneaker girl now all day,
Yep,
every
same.
day. But yeah, it's like when we were at work, we'd have the most ridiculous things happen. Like one day we had shirtless men come in to clean our desks to promote.
Oh,
I don't know what brand it was. I don't remember anymore, but I still remember the shirtless men coming out.
love that.
And like we had such big teams. There was this
Mm,
whole fashion wardrobe.
Oh, yes.
We'd have some local celebrities just come in to say hi. I remember our designer, we had photography studios as well on
Wow.
level 6, I think it was, or level 4. And one of our designers, she was just coming out of the toilet and bumped into bumped into someone famous. She was like, "Oh, hi." Like
Hi. Hi.
it was that
Yeah.
kind of place. It was super cool. And I think what I really miss about those days is having the time to really work on cool stories. Like I think
Yeah.
mm,
these days in the digital world, mostly for like the big brands, it's just all about page views and
Mm.
people
mm,
having to or being forced to churn out as much content as possible to in order to get those numbers.
mm,
And it's really sad, and I feel sad for the content producers these days who didn't have the luxury of time and never had it. Like you just get to create such a much better quality content when you
mm,
do
Mm.
have the time and you do have that feedback from your editors or your peers and you get to really workshop things. And from a consumer end, what I think people miss now in the digital age is that with a mag, I feel like you used to get so much variety of content, so much
mm,
different
Mm.
voices, whereas now we're being fed the same thing over and over and over. So you don't get that joy of discovering something new as much
Mm.
as
mm.
we used to. And where do teens, I am very curious, where do teens find out about sex these days? I remember being at a high
TikTok.
school TikTok.
TikTok, just saying. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. I just remember being at high school and have like the latest Dolly, the
The
Mm.
sealed
sealed
sales
Yep, yep,
editions.
section.
yep,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
At
the
yep.
greatest.
lunchtimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That we would
Yep.
just read those and
Mm.
that was fun. That sense of discovery was fun. And I think that's what's lacking nowadays.
Yeah, I
Mm,
think you're right. I think because everything's on our phone too. A magazine represented sort of luxury and time and sort of treat yourself, sit down, read a magazine, or now
Yeah.
everything's on our phone, so it just feels like something else to do. Or consuming content is, I don't know, it's not as pleasurable perhaps as it has been in the past
Yeah.
in a printed form.
But then on the bright side, it's like it also offers a way for other people to get their voices heard that
mm.
Yes.
otherwise they wouldn't have. It just
Yeah.
takes a lot more searching to find those. Like you have to
Yeah.
step away from the mainstream media
Mm,
to really find those voices.
Yeah.
that's right. And you've got the 3 a.m. huddle Substack, and obviously Substack is where a lot of people are heading for original, interesting content. So I think that's really great. That's a sort of way to discover different voices and yeah, a more varied array of content.
Yeah,
I'm finding with
absolutely.
Mm,
Substack, there's like a lot of the OG bloggers are
mm.
going back there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's actually a really nice place. Hopefully it
Mm.
stays that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so too. And you see a lot of former magazine editors as
Mm.
well starting Substacks. Yeah, so mine is called the 3 a.m. Huddle,
Mhm.
using the musings and the things that keep us up at night. But one of my favorite ones is called Oldster Magazine. And
Yes,
it
I think I
tells,
follow them. Yeah.
yeah, it
Mm.
tells stories of different people of
Yeah.
how they're approaching aging.
Mhm.
And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I love
Yeah.
that one. I love hearing people's stories.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely, and it's a real, mix of ages too, isn't it? There was,
Mm.
some people in their 80s, 90s. It was literally a whole raft of ages, which is great. Yeah, old stuff.
Yeah.
Lisa, for you personally and professionally, you've been through so much, you've done so much, you've packed a lot in. What's left for you? What's next or what's left? What changes would you like to make in your life?
Oh, this is the question that keeps me up at night.
This is the 3 a.m. question.
This is the 3, yeah, absolutely. This is the 3 a.m. question. So, since women's health closed down earlier this year, so that was in
Mhm.
March, I have honestly been trying to work out what exactly it is that I want to do next.
Mm.
Do I stay in media? Do I try something different? Like I have been so lucky to interview these really cool people lately who are they're advocating for a different cause. So, for example,
Mm.
I interviewed Samuel Johnson, who has his Love Your Sister charity,
Mm,
who he is all about taking precision medicine and making it accessible for every Australian.
Mm.
And then coming across this organization that finally has what they think is like a real solution to climate change where we electrify our homes and our
Wow.
vehicles. I'm like, people are doing some really cool stuff out there. And it kind of makes me feel like, is this the time of my career where I take all these great learnings from working in the media industry for 20 years and put it towards something like that?
Mm.
And I
mm.
kind of feel like, in a weird way, I'm being taken back to what I loved when I was in my 20s. So, when I
Yeah.
was in my 20s, I started this indie pop culture mag called Corker. It was all about celebrating the cool things of Aussie culture. And it was a quarterly publication. I put it together myself.
Oh.
It ended up dying because I didn't work on advertising. I ended up paying for it with my full time salary that I was earning at Clio.
Ah,
Um, but yeah, that was just like, again, about advocacy, like making sure that
Mm.
these cool indie musicians and artists had a place to showcase their work. And then even when I was 26, I ended up running for the state and federal elections as a Greens
Wow.
candidate.
oh my goodness, you've had like 17 lives.
I guess so, hey. But that again was because I was so concerned about climate change and I
Mm.
felt like I couldn't do anything. So may as well run for the Greens. And I knew I wasn't going to win, but I just
Mhm.
wanted to show
Mm,
other people that you could be young and care about the environment.
mm,
Yeah.
So it's a long way to answer your question that I feel pulled towards making that difference again.
Yep.
I don't
mm.
know how exactly that will look. And like looking back on my work in the health media, I guess I kind of do that in a way through health
Yeah.
advocacy.
You do.
And I've been loving writing my 3 a.m. huddle Substack,
Mm,
Mhm.
absolutely loving that. But yeah, who knows what next?
mm. We'll have to check
Yeah.
back in with you and see where it lands in 2024 onwards.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
there's no great rush, is there, really?
No, there's no rush. I guess the difference between now and when I was younger is I do feel the pressure of mortgage interest rate rises
Yes.
and having to look after a small child. And it makes me I feel less inclined to take as many risks as I
Yeah.
used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But hopefully, well, I guess we'll see. I feel
Mm,
like I'm at this stage where I'm just planting seeds everywhere
Mhm.
and just seeing what will sprout.
Yeah.
That's kind of
That's
exciting too.
yeah, it is exciting. I feel quite similarly, really. That's quite relatable. You're just seeing on the cusp of something, which I think is a great, and it sort of feels like that time of life too, maybe being in our, what are we calling it, our second spring or
Second spring.
third act or
Third act.
yeah.
Mhm.
I love them both. Which kind of brings us quite well to our final question, which is our podcast is called The Change, in part as a reference to the midlife experience of all women, commonly known as the menopause. And we want to
Mm.
know, Lisa, what is your experience or feeling towards the change?
Well, now that I'm in my early 40s,
Hmm.
I have been thinking about it quite a lot. And I think it's really great now that women are talking about it more. I always thought it was really weird that when we're younger, we know about puberty before we hit puberty.
Mhm.
Like we learn about it years earlier. And it's only now that we're having those same kind of conversations around perimenopause and menopause. So for me, I love finding women out there who are living lives living the lives that they want to live, like in
Mhm.
midlife and
Mm.
beyond. They're really defining their own lives on their terms, not being constrained by this idea of what we had of what women going through menopause should be like. It reminds me of the other day I was reading Oldster on Substack, and they had interviewed Elizabeth Gilbert of
Mm.
Eat, Pray, Love fame, and she's gone through menopause. And she was saying that in other cultures, they call it like their second childhood.
Mm.
And
Love
she's
that.
talking, yeah, she's talking
Mhm.
about all this freedom that she's had and felt since she's gone through menopause. And she said that she feels as free as she did when she was a 9-year-old kid again, when she could just create and just enjoy life. And I really love that. So for me, it's about seeking stories of women like that so that I feel like I have the permission to also, you know, live
Yeah.
differently, live big. Why not?
Mm.
Hey,
Yeah,
why not?
absolutely. Why not?
Yeah, I love that. Live big and access that inner child again for the second time.
Mm.
And yeah, yeah, I think that's a great way to be and to think
Perfect.
about it.
Yeah.
Wow, Laura, you weren't wrong when you said that she is a powerhouse.
Yeah, she really is. She's just one of those people that is always so busy and not just doing one thing. She's got that portfolio career happening where
Mm.
she's done so many things. And also, obviously, the Fitspo aspect. She's a little,
Absolutely.
she's small, but she is mighty and she is powerful. And all her talk of boxing just, yeah, it was really interesting. I thought that,
Yeah, that chat about the clackers really conjures that Devil Wears Prada episode at the beginning where they're all talking about the women in the high heels and how they come to work in their flats
yes,
and pop the stilettos on before the boss walks in and,
those were the
but
days. Mm.
oh, weren't they just? But one of the big takeaways for me was when she was talking about boxing, which is really interesting because I was fascinated by all of those things because that's where I always wanted to be, but
Mm,
never did.
mm,
And then the boxing, it was really interesting when she was talking about that being really strategic and
mm.
being kind of like a game of chess. It's not about being the most powerful. It's not about who can hit the hardest, but it's about who can make the next right move, planning ahead and thinking about her next move.
Yeah, it was very sort of strategic, wasn't it? And it
Mm.
made me think there is a lot more to it, as there always is. You kind of look superficially at sport and people's hobbies and think, oh, well, that's one thing. But actually, when you talk to people that are really good at it, you're like, no, no, it's something completely different and so much more complex than I ever imagined. And yeah, obviously taught her a lot about resilience and how
Mm.
she, used those skills learned in the ring to get through COVID and various changes at work and motherhood. And yeah, it's
Mm.
really I've never wanted a box,
Yeah.
but she did make me think, "Oh, maybe it would be quite interesting." I think I am a
Yeah.
little bit too old, but
No
I shouldn't
one's
say
too
that.
old for
No,
anything.
that's
No
right,
one's
never
too
too
old for
old.
anything.
No.
And I
Mhm.
really appreciated her honesty
Mm,
around that she couldn't have done it all
mm.
without the help
Yeah,
because
me
I think
too.
that's sometimes it's lacking in our conversations.
Yes.
I think people privately are very honest with their friends, but publicly they don't want to be quite as honest about the help that they get to do the things that they do. And the reality is men get the help, oftentimes their wives,
Oh,
but
yes,
they
yes.
can't do what they do. Most people that are doing big jobs can't do what they do if
Without
they
a
don't.
team,
Yeah.
or a support person, at least one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree. I really appreciated her talking about her community, a mum and a mother-in-law, and helping with child care when she was doing that big job for women's health. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's good, isn't it? It's like looking behind the curtain and saying, well, that's good, because
Yeah.
to everyone, you look at Lisa, she's so well groomed, she's beautiful, she's smart, she's got everything going. But it is helpful to know that she does have some people helping her achieve her amazing goals. Yeah, it was a really great chat.
I can't wait to see where she goes next.
Yeah, that's right. And what she's going to do next, which I'm sure will be equally as interesting.
Thanks for listening to The Change, a fully independent podcast. Whether you're seeking inspiration, curious about change, or just here for the great banter, we'd love you to make The Change your new go-to podcast.
And even better, send us your voice notes or questions about change. We'll use them on the show. Email us at changepod2023@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at _change_pod. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram for more on The Change.